The phone rang at 11:47 p.m., and Daniel almost didn't answer it. The apartment was dark, except for the dull glow of the television, which had been playing for hours without sound, more habit than entertainment. Daniel had fallen asleep on the couch with his shoes still on, his head tilted uncomfortably against the armrest, his body exhausted in the specific way that comes from days that feel longer than they should. When the phone vibrated against the wooden table beside him, it felt intrusive, like a knock on a door he hadn't opened in years. He glanced at the screen through half-closed eyes. No name, no picture, just a number he didn't recognize. Normally, that would have been enough. Daniel had learned to ignore late-night calls long ago. Nothing good ever arrived after midnight. Drunk friends, wrong numbers, bad news delivered too late to fix. He had built a quiet life by choosing not to answer things. The phone stopped ringing, then started again. Something about that bothered him. Not urgency, not fear, familiarity. The number looked ordinary, but his mind reacted as if it had seen it before, like a word on the tip of the tongue or a dream that fades seconds after waking. His hand moved before he fully decided to let it. He answered. He didn't say hello at first. He waited. On the other end, there was breathing, slow, steady, deliberate. Not the nervous breathing of a prank caller, not the distracted breathing of someone multitasking. This was controlled, as if the person had practiced it. Then a voice spoke his name. Daniel. It wasn't loud, it wasn't threatening, it didn't need to be. Hearing his name from a stranger at nearly midnight did something subtle and irreversible inside him. His body reacted before his thoughts caught up. His back straightened, his eyes opened fully, his heartbeat shifted. He asked who it was, but the question sounded weaker than he intended. The voice replied calmly that Daniel was not supposed to be answering this phone. That sentence alone told him more than any explanation could have. It implied planning, expectation, a system that had failed. Before Daniel could respond, the call ended. He stared at the screen, waiting for something else to happen. A callback, a notification, anything to explain what had just occurred. Nothing came. The apartment felt quieter than before, as if the walls themselves were listening now. He told himself it was a mistake, a prank, someone guessing names, but the voice had not guessed. It had known, and knowing is different. When the phone rang again 3 minutes later, Daniel answered immediately, without hesitation, without logic. Curiosity had already crossed the line where it becomes commitment. The same voice returned, less patient now. It said that answering again had made things worse, that systems rely on predictability, and Daniel had introduced uncertainty. He demanded an explanation. The voice gave him one, slowly, carefully, like a surgeon describing a procedure to someone who had no choice but to listen. Daniel's number, he was told, had been used as a temporary relay, a digital placeholder, a ghost node designed to exist for one call only, then disappear. It wasn't supposed to be answered, it wasn't supposed to be noticed. But Daniel answered, and now the system recognized him. The voice didn't threaten him, it didn't ask for anything, it simply stated facts. That something would happen later that night, that it would happen whether Daniel believed or not, that his involvement was already complete. When the call ended again, Daniel sat in silence, trying to convince himself that nothing had changed. But deep down, he already knew it had. The narrator explains that fear doesn't always arrive as panic. Sometimes it arrives as focus. Daniel didn't sleep. He sat on the couch staring at his phone, replaying the voice in his head, dissecting every word for tone, for intention, for cracks that might reveal a joke or a lie. None appeared. The voice had been too precise, too measured. Prank callers rush, liars over-explain. This voice had done neither. At 12:06 a.m., the phone rang again. This time, the voice didn't bother with introductions. It began listing details: a building across town, an address Daniel vaguely recognized but had never visited, a man who would leave his apartment at exactly 12:18 a.m., a stairwell camera that hadn't worked in months, a door that would be unlocked for precisely 7 seconds. Daniel interrupted, demanding to know why he was being told this. The voice answered that information only mattered if someone heard it. That was its role. That was now his. Daniel laughed, the sound sharp and defensive. He accused the voice of making things up, coincidences, guesswork. The voice told him to write the details down if it would make him feel better. Then it added something that made Daniel's laughter stop: the man's name. Daniel felt the shift immediately, like a floor giving way beneath a carpet. Names are anchors. They turn abstractions into people. The voice spoke the name casually, without emphasis, as if it were just another data point. Daniel realized then that the voice wasn't predicting possibilities. It was confirming inevitabilities. When the call ended, Daniel told himself he would forget it, that he wouldn't look it up, that he wouldn't check. Instead, he opened his laptop. The address existed, the building existed, the name belonged to a man who lived there. At 12:17 a.m., Daniel's phone vibrated one last time. The voice didn't speak long. It simply said that the call would end now and that Daniel should try not to interfere, that systems corrected disruptions. The call ended. At 12:19 a.m., sirens filled the city. The narrator slowed here, allowing the weight of realization to settle. Daniel didn't need the news to know something had happened. He felt it in the air, in the way the city's distant sounds reorganized themselves around urgency. But he watched anyway. He waited for the confirmation his mind refused to accept without proof. The report was brief, clinical. A man found dead near his apartment building. Time of incident, approximately 12:18 a.m. Daniel didn't breathe for several seconds. He told himself it was coincidence, even as his body rejected the lie. Cities are full of deaths. Timelines overlap. Patterns appear where none exist. But the details lined up too cleanly, too precisely. His phone remained silent. That silence was worse than the calls. Over the next 2 days, Daniel tried to return to his routine. He went to work, he spoke to people, he smiled at the right moments. No one noticed anything wrong. That terrified him more than fear ever could. The world had absorbed something enormous without reacting at all. On the 3rd night, the phone rang again. The voice sounded different now. Not relieved, not triumphant, resigned. It said that Daniel's confirmation had been logged, that systems required validation, witnessing mattered. Daniel demanded to know how many times this had happened before. The voice paused, then said it didn't have an exact number, only that most people didn't answer, and those who did rarely answered twice. Daniel asked why he had been chosen. The voice corrected him. He hadn't been chosen. He had volunteered. Then it said something Daniel would never forget. It's easier when they think they're special. The call ended. The narrator explains that knowledge changes behavior, even when nothing else does. Daniel became hyper-aware of time, of numbers, of patterns. He noticed how often his phone lit up for reasons that meant nothing. Notifications, spam, updates. Each vibration made his stomach tighten. He stopped sleeping on the couch. He stopped leaving the television on. He began sitting in silence, waiting for something he could not define. He realized that the voice had never asked him to do anything. It hadn't needed to. Listening was enough. He searched online for similar stories, found none. No one talked about voices that predicted deaths before they happened. No forums, no warnings. That absence told him everything. Systems erase anomalies. On the 6th night, the phone rang without vibration, without sound. The screen simply lit up. No number, no voice, just text. You are still active. Daniel understood then that the calls were never the point. The point was acknowledgement, awareness, participation. He powered the phone off. Nothing happened. The screen turned back on. The narrator closes slowly, deliberately. Daniel never received another call, not in the way he expected. No voice, no explanations. But every night at exactly 11:47 p.m., his phone lights up. No sound, no number, just a soft glow in the darkness. He learned not to answer, but he also learned something worse. Somewhere, something knows he's listening, and that is enough. The narrator leaves the listener with a final thought. Some calls are mistakes, some are invitations, and some only exist to prove that you were always part of the system the moment you chose to listen.